Hello friends, Satyendra here, and in this video let's design the tailstock assembly. So this is your tailstock assembly drawing, and if you see this drawing, this is the lathe assembly. So you must have seen this machine in your machine shop workshop, and here you have your tailstock assembly. Now the tailstock assembly is used to hold the job in between this 4-jaw chuck and this dead center, which is a part of tailstock assembly. So this tailstock assembly slides over this bed depending upon the size of the job. So in this video, we will do this tailstock assembly using this drawing. So you have all the part listed here with these balloons. So first we will complete all these parts using this drawing, and then using bottom up assembly approach, we will assemble these parts to complete this assembly. So let's start with the first part, which is the tailstock body. So let's get started. And to do this, first you go to new, part, solid, assign the name, uncheck default template and say OK. Now select a metric template. So this is my metric template, millimeter kilogram second. In your case, you can select this template. So here I will select this template. I will say OK. Now to design this part, I will use add material feature and remove material feature together at a time. So I will start with this face, and for this go to extrude onto the front datum plane, normal. Now draw a center line just like this, then a line, make it symmetry. Now this is 76, draw another line, start from here, this side, this side, this side, then this side, then this side. Now this is 20, and from here till here till here, this is 108. Similarly from here till here till here, this is 150, and this is 25. Now draw another line like this and this. Now from here till here, this is 38, and from here till here till here, this is 62. Now draw one circle somewhere here. Now this is 62. Now from here till here, this is 150. Now draw one line. From here, make it tangent and connect it here. Now add one round from here till here. Make this point and this point vertical. Now this is 28. Draw another line from here till this point. Now make this two segment parallel. Now select this line and make it construction. Now go to delete segment, delete this segment and this segment. Now mirror this half portion with this reference. Now to see it clear, uncheck the constraint display. So now you can see it clearly. Now say OK. Flip it. Now the total length is 242. Say OK. Now the next feature is this cut. So go to extrude, switch on the datum plane, select this datum plane, normal. Now go to reference, select top edge, then this edge and this side edge as a reference. Now draw one arc from this point, this side, just like this. Then one line, start from here, let it be tangent and connect it here. Then close it just like this. Now draw one center line here, then a sketch point somewhere here, then go for dimension. From this point till this end, one dimension, and from this point till this end. So this is 62 and this is 38 plus 44 plus 64 plus 32. Go to delete segment and delete this segment. Now this is 45. Now take this end as a reference and draw one rectangle just like this. Now from here till here, this is 37 and this side also it is 37. Now say OK. Remove material till next, and in second direction also it is to next. Now say OK. Now the next feature is this center cut, and for this go to extrude, create a new datum plane, select this surface, drag it this side up to 38. So it is this value. So now you can see that your sketching plane is 38 away from the surface. Now project this, and this curve. This also you project. Now draw one line from this point, this side, and then this side. One more time, from this point, this side and this side. Now the dimension. So from here till here, this is 62. Go to delete segment and remove this side segment and this side segment. So now it is a closed sketch. Say OK. Flip the direction. And this is 44 plus 64. Now I will just add a center axis. So the next feature is this feature, and for this I will go to revolve. I will switch on the datum plane and I will select this datum plane. Take the reference of this center line. Draw a center line, then a rectangle, start from this side, go till this end, then again go for reference and select this top edge. Now using this option, move this line to this reference. Now this is 70 and this is 280. Say OK. and OK. One more time revolve, placement, define, use previous to select the previous sketching plane. Go to reference, select the center line, then this edge and this side edge. Now draw the center line, then line, start from here, this side, one circle here. Now this is 18, this is 12, and this will be 9. Draw a line from here this side, and then from here this side, and from here this side. Now go for delete segment, remove this segment and this segment. Now from here till here, this is 72 and this is 86. From here till here this is 18, and close this sketch and say OK. So this is done. Now the round, select this edge, this is 38 and say OK. One more round, this one and this one, this is 12, select this and this. Similarly this side, so the next feature will be this feature, which is this one, here also. So go to extrude, again create a new datum plane. From the bottom, this side it is 45, so now you can see the sketching plane. Now draw the reference this side, draw a center line here, then the circle somewhere here. Now this is 31. Now draw the line from here till here, just mirror it. Now go for delete segment, now this is 44, now the sketch is not closed, and that is why it is showing the red mark. So use corner and select this line with this and this with this line. So now the sketch is closed, say OK, flip the direction and say to next. See the preview, say OK. Now the next feature is this feature, which is here and here, and for this create a datum plane. From here press and hold Ctrl key and select the center line, make it parallel Now go to extrude. So normal, draw a circle somewhere here. So this is 38 and this is 40. Now this is 70. Now make it symmetry and say OK. One more time extrude, placement, define, use previous, normal. Go to reference and select this circle as a reference. Now draw the line from here this side and from here till here and then this side. Close it. Say OK. Uncheck it. Make it symmetry and this will be 62. Say OK. Now the next feature is this cut, which is this one, and for this go to extrude, select this surface, normal, go to reference, select this circle. Now draw the circle which is dia 38, say OK. Flip the direction and make it through all. Say OK. So one more cut on the same plane. Go to reference, select this edge, draw the center line. Now draw the rectangle from here, this side. Now this is 4. Say OK. Flip the direction. Remove material. Now this is 76. And say OK. Now the next feature is this feature. So go to hole, switch on your center axis, select this surface, press and hold Control key and select this axis. Now this dia is 22, which is this one. But if you see this hole, this is not constant. The bottom side is 16 and top side is 22, 16 and 22. So for this kind of hole, go to sketch, sketcher, draw a center line, a vertical center line, then draw the rough hole profile. So this is 22. Draw the line just like this, a rough profile of that hole. This bottom will be 16 and this is 70 and this will be 35. Say OK. So now you can see this hole. You can clearly see the small dia and big dia, which is 22 and 16. Now you say OK. Now the next feature is this hole, and for this go to hole, switch on the datum plane, select this datum plane, now drag this handle to this surface and this handle to the center plane. So this is 0 and this is 25. Make it minus 25. Now the dia is 6 and you make it 2 next and say OK. So this hole is done. Now the next feature is this hole, and for this once again go to hole, select this surface, drag this handle to this surface. So this is 38 plus 44 and this handle to this mid plane. This will be 0 and this is dia 23. Make it 2 next and say OK. Now the next feature is the side holes, screw holes. So go to hole, select this surface, switch on your axis and datum plane. Now this drag handle to this center axis and this drag handle to the mid plane. So to this plane. Now go to placement and change it to diameter. So this is M8 standard hole. So go to standard and from here select ISO and from here you select M8. Now go to the shape. Now here you have the thread length which is 12 and here you have the hole length which is 15. Now this angle will be 0 and this is the PCD. So this is 56. So your hole is done. Now go for pattern, axis pattern, select this center axis, 4 items with 360 degree, say OK. Now the round, so this edge and this edge, this is 12. One more round to this edge, this is 6. Another round to this edge, this is 5. One more round to this edge, this edge, this edge and this edge. This is 6. Then one more round here, this is 3. Say OK. Then the last round, which is this one, and this one. This is one, and your part is done. Now go to view, sections, planar, switch on your datum planes and select this datum plane. Go to properties, make it A and say OK. So you got section A. Similarly, planar, select this surface, drag this side. This is 38 plus 44, 82. Make it B and say OK. So now you have section A and B. So if I activate section A and make it normal, it looks like this. And if I activate B and make it normal, it looks like this. So this area is exactly similar to this. And your part is done. So the first part is done. Now the second part. So second part is feather, which comes somewhere here. Now this part is having two functions here. The first function is to guide this barrel to move forward and backward, and the second function is to stop this barrel rotating by its own axis. So this is your second part, the barrel. So let's do this part. And for this, first you go to new, part, solid, assign the name, uncheck the default template and select a metric template. So this is my metric template. In your case, you can go with this template. So I'll go with this template. Now to start this part, go to extrude onto the front datum plane, normal. Now draw a center rectangle, just like this. Now this is 3 and this is 12. Say OK. Make it symmetry, and this is 4.5 and say OK. Now one more time extrude onto the bottom surface. So just right click to shift the surface. Go to reference, switch on the datum plane and select this mid plane. Now draw a circle, just like this. The dia of circle is 6. Say OK. Now the height is 13 from the top surface. So for that, go to 2 selected and then create a datum plane. From this top surface, drag it down till 13 and say OK. Now click here and say OK. So now if you edit this feature, you can see that this 13 is from the top surface and this part is done. So the second part is done. Now the third part, and the third part is barrel, which is this part. So these parts hold the dead center and this part moves forward and backward using this part, which is screw spindle. So this is your third part, the barrel. So let's do this part. And to do this, first you go to new, part, solid, assign the name, uncheck the default template and select a metric template. So this is my metric template. In your case, you can go with this template. So I'll go with this template. Now to start this part, go to revolve onto the front datum plane, normal, draw a datum center line, then a rectangle, just like this. Now this is 265 and this is 38. Say OK and OK. One more time revolve, same plane, say use previous, normal. Go for reference, select this reference, then a datum center line, just like this. Now draw the sketch. So start from here, just like this. Now close the sketch. Now the dimension, so this is 20 and from here till here this is 45. This is 22, this you take 15 and from here till here this is 45. Now this taper angle, so this is given here 1:20. So to calculate this value, just divide 45 by 20. So you will get the value. That value you minus from dia 20. So you will get 2.25. So this value will be 20 minus 2.25. So 17.75. Say OK and say OK. Now create a section view. So go to view, section, switch on your datum plane, select this plane, rename it to section A and say OK. Now the next feature is this keyway, and for this go to extrude, switch on your datum plane, select this plane, now go to reference, select this reference and this reference. Now draw the sketch. So start from here, go like this, come down, then this side, then an arc from here to this, go for delete segment, delete this segment, then move this point to this line. Now this gap is 3 and from here till here it is 20. Say OK. Now this is 4.5. Make it symmetry, remove material and say OK. Now the next feature is this thread. This is a square thread, 20 into pitch 5 LH. So go to helical sweep, reference, define, switch on your datum plane, and select this datum plane. Sketch, normal. Now go to reference, select this reference, Draw center line, then draw the thread profile. Little extra this side and little extra this side, just like this. The value is 5 both the side. And say OK. Now go to section and draw one rectangle, just like this. This value will be 2.5. Say OK. So now you are getting a thread. So go to left hand side, remove material, and the pitch is 5. Say OK, and your thread is done. And this part is done. So the third part is done. Now the fourth part, which is screw spindle, which is this part. So this part rotates using this hand wheel, and this part is having square thread here through which it moves this barrel forward and backward. So this is your fourth part, the screw spindle. So let's do this part. And to do this, first you go to new, part, solid, assign the name, uncheck the default template and select a metric template. So this is my metric template. In your case, you can go with this template. So I'll go with this template. Now to create this part, go to revolve onto the front datum plane, normal, draw a datum center line, then rectangle, just like this. So this is 300 minus 74 and this is 20. Say OK and OK. Now the next feature is the square thread. So go for helical sweep, reference, define, select this datum plane, sketch, normal, now add a center line, then reference here and here. Now draw the thread profile, start from somewhere here till here, little extra both side. So this you take 5 and this side also you take 5. Say OK. Now go for section, draw a rectangle somewhere here and this will be 2.5. Say OK, remove material, the pitch value is 5 and say OK. So square thread is done. Now one more time revolve, select this datum plane, normal, draw a datum center line, then sketch, start from here, just draw a rough sketch, just like this, close this, now add one arc, roughly, just like this, then the dimension. So this is 32, this is 20, this is 16, this is 12, this is also 12, this is 18, now from here till here this is 16 and this is 28. Now this you consider 16 and this is 3. Say OK. And OK. Now the next feature is this keyway, and for this go to extrude, select this surface, normal, go to reference, select this reference, draw a center line, a vertical center line, and then a horizontal center line. Draw a rectangle, let it be symmetry. So this is 4.5 and this is 2.25. Say OK. Go to remove material, to selected, and select this surface. OK. Now this portion is the threaded portion. So go to cosmetic thread, select this surface. Now the depth. So this is the starting point. So I'll start from here and I'll go to selected and the thread will be till here. Go to standard, select ISO and from here select M12. And say OK. Now the last feature is the chamfer. So select this edge and this edge. The value will be 1. Say OK. And this part is done. So the fourth part is done. Now the fifth part, which is flange, which is this part. So this part supports this spindle. So this is your fifth part, the flange. So let's do this part now. And to do this, first you go to new, part, solid, assign the name, uncheck the default template and select a metric template. So this is my metric template. In your case, you can go with this template. So I'll go with this template. Now to create this part, go to revolve onto the front datum plane, normal, draw the datum center line, just like this, then draw the sketch, draw one line first. Now this is 72, then add a rough sketch, just like this. Go for delete segment and delete this segment. Now the dimension. So this is 18 and this is 12. Now this is 20 and this is 38. Say OK and OK. Now the next feature is these holes with dia 8. So go to hole, select this surface, switch on your datum planes and datum axis. Drag this handle to this axis and this handle to this plane. Go to placement and change it to diameter. Now this angle will be 0 and this is the PCD, which is 56. Now the dia of hole is 8 and the depth is 2 next. Say OK and your hole is done. Now select the hole, go for pattern, go for axis pattern, select the center axis 360 degree and say OK and your part is done. Now add a section view. So go to view, section, select this datum plane. Now rename it to section A and say OK. And this part is done. So the fifth part is done. Now the sixth part, which is screw, which comes somewhere here. So the screw is used to fix this flange to this tailstock body. So this is your screw. So let's create this part. And to do this, first you go to new, part, solid, assign the name, uncheck the default template and select a metric template. So this is my metric template. So in your case, you can go with this template. So I'll go with this template. Now to create this part, go to revolve onto the front datum plane, normal, draw a datum center line, just like this. Then the sketch, start from here, like this. Now this dimension will be 16. Then arc from here, this side, just like this. Now this will be 8.5. Then draw the sketch from here, this side and this side. Delete segment, delete this segment and this segment. Now this is 22 and this will be 8. Say OK and OK. Now go to extrude onto the front datum plane, draw a center line, then go for reference, select this as a reference, then one more center line, then draw one rectangle, make it symmetry. Now this gap is 1.5 and this is 3.5. Say OK. Remove material, 2 next. Now the second direction, here also 2 next and say OK. Now the last feature is chamfer. So go to chamfer, select this edge, the value is 1 and say OK. Next feature is the thread. So go to engineering, cosmetic thread and select this surface. Then go to standard and from here you select emit. Now the depth. So this is the starting surface. So my thread will start from here and go to 2 selected and select this surface. Say OK. And this part is done. Now this part is done. Now the next part, which is feather key, which comes somewhere here. So the purpose of feather key is to engage this spindle with this hand wheel. So this is your feather key. So let's do this part. And to do this, first you go to New, Part, Solid, assign the name, uncheck the default template and select a metric template. So this is my metric template. You can go with this template. So I'll go with this template. Now to create this part, go to Extrude, onto the top datum plane, Normal. Now draw a center rectangle, make both sides equal. Now this is 4.5. Say OK. Now the height is 28. Make it symmetry and say OK. And this part is done. So this part is done. Now the next part, which is hand wheel, which is this part. So the hand wheel is used to rotate this spindle, which transfer his rotational motion to the sliding motion of the barrel. So this is your hand wheel. So let's do this part now. And to do this, first you go to New, Part, Solid, assign the name, uncheck the default template and select a metric template. So this is my metric template. So in your case, you can go with this template. So I'll go with this template. Now to create this part, first you go for revolve, onto the right datum plane, Normal, draw a datum center line, then a sketch center line, then draw one circle somewhere here. The dia of circle is 22. And from here till here, this is 185. Then draw one rectangle somewhere here. Now this is 35 and this is 28. Say OK and OK. Now the next feature is this feature, and for this first I will draw one sketch onto the front datum plane. Draw one center line just like this, then two circles. One is smaller circle like this and another one is bigger circle like this. So this is 163. So this circle should pass in the center of the wheel, and this is 45. Then draw one line, start from here, taper till here, mirror this line, then draw one sketch point somewhere here and here, and here and here. Now the dimension. So from here till here, this is 23, and from here till here, this is 20. Then draw one more line from the center till here. Now make this circle construction and this circle also construction. So these two circles are for the reference. Now say OK. Now I'll go with sweep, multiple path sweep. So I'll select the center path, then this path and this path. Then go for sketch, but always select this option. and go for sketch. Normal. Now draw the sketch. So I will draw one circle just like this and like this. Both the circles should be equal. Now draw one line from the tangent of this to this and this to this. Now go to delete segment and delete these two segments. Now this is 5 and say OK. So now you are getting a multi-path sweep. Now pattern this feature. Go for axis pattern. Switch on the axis and select this center axis. Total item 6 onto 360 degree and say OK. Now go for extrude. Select this surface. Draw one circle. One center line. Now draw a line from here this side, then this side and this side. Make it symmetry, this point and this point with this reference. So this is 4.5 and this is 16. And from here till here this is 10.5. Go for delete segment, delete this segment and say OK. Flip the direction and it is 2 next and say OK. Now couple of rounds. So go to round. Select this edge, this is 2, then press and hold Ctrl key and select all these edges and say OK. Similarly, one more round to this edge, press and hold Ctrl key and select all similar edges. This is one. One more time round. Select this edge and this edge. Say OK. Now let's create a section view. So go to view, section, select top datum plane, rename it to section A and say OK. So now you can see the section. So this is how the section will look. And this part is done. So this part is done. Now the next part, which is stud, which comes somewhere here. So the stud, with the help of this handle, tighten the jaw of this body so that it can fix this barrel at any position. So this is your stud. So let's do this part. And to do this, first you go to new, part, solid, assign the name, uncheck the default template and select a metric template. So this is my metric template. You can go with this template. So I'll go with this template. Now to create this part, go to revolve onto the front datum plane, normal, draw a datum center line just like this, then the sketch, start from here, this side, come down, go this side, Draw a rough sketch just like this. Now the dimension. So this is 20 and this is 55, and from here till here this is 125. Now this is 16 and this is 22. Say OK and OK. Now this part is having standard thread M16. So for this, go to Engineering, Cosmetic Thread, select this surface. Select Standard, and from here you select M16. Now the depth, so starting surface, so this will be my starting surface and the depth is 27. And say OK. Similarly, one more time, go to Cosmetic Sketch, this time you select this surface, Standard, ISO, M16. Now the depth, so this is starting surface, so this will be my starting surface. Now this depth is 35 and say OK. Now the chamfer, so select this edge and this edge, and this part is done. So the stud is done. Now the next part is this handle. So this is your handle. So let's do this now. And to do this, first you go to New, Part, Solid, assign the name, uncheck the default template and select a metric template. So this is my metric template. So in your case, you can go with this template. So I'll go with this template. Now to create this part, first you go to Revolve, onto the front datum plane, normal. Now draw a datum center line, just like this, then a circle somewhere here. The circle dia is 40. Then draw one line from here this side and from here this side. Now go for delete segment, delete this segment. Now from here till here, this is 11, and from here till here, this is 27.5. Now close the sketch and say OK. One more time revolve onto this datum plane. Draw again a datum center line. From here, this side, the angle is 15 degree. Now draw a circle somewhere here. This dia is 32. Then take a reference. Draw a line from here till here. Now this is 25 and this is 12. Now draw a normal line like this and like this. Then go to delete segment, delete this segment and this segment. Now the gap from here till here, this is 135. Say OK. And OK. Now the hole, so this is a standard hole M16. So go to hole, switch on your center axis, then select this surface, press and hold Ctrl key and select this axis. Now select standard, ISO and M16. Depth is 2 next and say OK. Now the round, so go to round, select this edge and this edge. Now the value is 2 and say OK. And this part is done. So the handle is done. Now the next part is clamping plate, which is this plate. So this plate is used to hold this tailstock onto the bed of lathe assembly. So this is your clamping plate. So let's do this part now. And to do this, first you go to new, part, solid, assign the name, uncheck the default template and select a metric template. So this is my metric template. You can go with this template. So I'll go with this template. Now to start this part, go to extrude, onto the right datum plane, normal, draw a center line, just like this, then a line, start from here, make it symmetry. Now this is 126, then draw the rough sketch. Start from here, this side, this side, this side and this side. Mirror these lines using this reference. Now the dimension, so this is 106, this is 10, and from here till here this is 25. So first you delete this equal constant, and then from here till here this will be 25. Say OK. Now the total height is 76. Make it symmetry and say OK. Now the next feature is this feature. So go to extrude, select this surface, normal, go for reference, select right reference. Now draw a center rectangle. Just like this. Now this is 22. Say OK. Flip the direction and make it 2 next. Say OK. Now the last feature is the round. So select this edge and this edge. The round value will be 5 and say OK. And this part is done. So the clamping plate is done. Now the next part is square head bolt, which is this part. So this part is used to fix the clamping plate. So this is your square head bolt. So let's do this part now. And to do this, first you go to new, part, solid, assign the name, uncheck the default template and select a metric template. So this is my metric template. You can go with this template. So I'll go with this template. So to create this part, first you go to extrude, onto the right datum plane, normal. Now draw a center rectangle, just like this. Now this is 32. Say OK. Now the thickness is 20 and say OK. One more time extrude to this surface, normal, again center rectangle, just like this. This time it is 22. Say OK. Now this is also 22 and say OK. Again extrude onto this surface, normal, draw a circle, just like this. Now go for reference, select this edge as a reference. Now make it tangent and say OK. Now this height is 98. Uncheck remove material and say OK. Now the next feature is this chamfer, and for this go to revolve, switch on your datum plane, select this datum plane, normal. Now draw a datum center line. Then go for reference, draw the sketch, just like this. Now this angle will be 30 degree and this you consider 15. Say OK. Remove material and say OK. So the chamfer is done. Now the next feature is this thread, which is M22. So for this go to engineering, cosmetic thread and select this surface. Now go to standard, ISO, and from here you select M22. Now the depth, so this is starting surface, so this will be my starting surface. Now the depth is 50 and say OK. Now the last feature is chamfer, so go to chamfer, select this edge, the value is 1 and say OK. And this part is done. So this part is done. Now the next part is dead center, which is this part. So this part is used to hold the second end of the job, and this part will be inserted in this barrel. So this is your dead center. So let's do this part now. And to do this, first you go to new, part, solid, assign the name, uncheck the default template and select a metric template. So this is my metric template. In your case, you can go with this template. So I'll go with this template. Now to create this part, go to revolve, onto the front datum plane, normal, draw a datum center line, then draw the sketch. Start from here, just like this. Now this angle is 60 and this is 22. Now draw the half section, just like this. Now the dimension, so this is 32 and this is 20.4 and this is 17.9. and from here till here this is 50. Now to calculate this 17.9, you need to understand this taper angle 1:20. So to calculate 17.9, first you divide 50, which is this portion length, by 20. So you will get one value. That value you minus by 20.4. So you will get 17.9. So if you divide 50 by 20, you will get 2.5, and if you minus 2.5 from 20.4, you will get 17.9. So this is that value. Now you say OK and OK, and the part is done. So all the parts are done. Now at last we have some fasteners. So we have three different size of nut and washer. So these two are M12, then here you have M16, then M22. So let's do this part now. And to do this, first you go to new, part, solid, assign the name, uncheck the default template and select a metric template. So this is my metric template. In your case, you can go with this template. So I'll go with this. Now to design these fasteners, I will follow these formulas. So here I am doing for M12. So the same procedure can be followed for other two sizes. And to do this, first you go to extrude, onto the front datum plane, normal, go to palette, 6-sided hexagon. Now move it here, rotate it, scale you make it 10 and say OK. Now delete this dimension and take side to side dimension from here till here. For M12 it will be 21. Say OK. Now this thickness will be 10.8. Make it symmetry and say OK. Now the chamfer, so go to revolve, select this datum plane, normal, go for reference, draw a datum center line, now draw the sketch, just like this. This angle will be 30 degree and this I will consider 5. Say OK. Remove material and say OK. Mirror it. To this datum plane. Now the next feature is the hole. So switch on the datum axis. Now select this surface, press and hold Ctrl key and select this axis. Go to standard, select ISO, and then from here you select M12. Depth you take 2 next and say OK. Now the last feature is chamfer. So go to chamfer, select this edge, the value is 1 and select this edge. Say OK and this part is done. So here this part is created for M12. Now the same procedure can be followed for other two sizes. So to create this part, go to extrude, onto the front datum plane, normal, draw the circle. So this will be 24. One more circle and this will be 13. Say OK. Make it symmetry and the round off value will be 2. Say OK, and this part is done. So all the parts are done. Now let's move to the assembly, and for that first you go to New, Assembly, assign the name, uncheck the default template and select a metric template. So this is my metric template. In your case you can go with this template. So I'll go with this template. Now there are two different approaches to do the assembly. The first one is the top-down assembly approach, where we create all the parts directly inside the assembly environment. Then the second approach is the bottom-up assembly approach, where we first create all the parts individually and then using assemble, we assemble all the parts inside the assembly environment. So here we will go with the bottom-up assembly approach. So we will start with the first part, the body part, which is this part. So go to assemble, select the first part, say open. Now for the first part, directly go to the placement and make it default. And your first part is done. Now let's create a section view. So go to view, section, switch on your datum plane, select this datum plane, rename it to section A and say OK. So we have just created a section A. Now the second part, which is feather, which comes somewhere here. Now to assemble any part, we minimum need 3 constraints, and sometime if you have a part which is similar all around, then just by using 2 constraints we can even fix the part. The third constraint will be automatically assumed. So go to assemble, select the second part, switch on the second window where you can see the preview of second part. This will help you to assemble this part. Select this surface to this surface, then this side surface to this side surface. Now this should be parallel. Then the third constraint, which is this bottom surface to this surface, and this should be tangent. So this will automatically select tangent, say OK, and your second part is done. Now the third part, which is barrel, which comes somewhere here. So go to assemble, select the third part. Now select this surface with this surface and flip it. Now from this surface to this surface, make it distance, and the value will be 38. Then go to placement and uncheck allow assumptions. Select third constraint, then select this surface to the side surface. Now make this parallel and say OK. So your third part is done. Now the fourth part, which is screw spindle, which comes somewhere here. So go to assemble, select fourth part, select this surface with this body surface, this also you flip. Now drag it this side, then from this surface to this surface, make it distance, and the distance value is 6. Now select this surface to the side surface. This is the third constraint, and this should be parallel, and say OK. So your fourth part is done. Now you can clearly see how nicely the threads are sitting with each other. Now the fifth part, which is flange, which comes somewhere here. So go to assemble, select the fifth part, now select this surface with this surface, then this surface should sit on this surface. Now this you make it coincident, then go for third constraint, and select this hole with this hole, say OK, and your fifth part is done. Now the sixth part, which is screw, which comes here. So go to assemble, select the sixth part, now select this surface with this surface and this surface with this surface. Now go to placement and select allow assumptions, because this part is all around same, so no need to add the third constraint. Now select the part and go for pattern, and your screw is patterned. Now the seventh part, which is feather key, which comes here to engage wheel with the spindle. So go to assemble and select the next part. Now select this surface with this surface. This should be coincident. Then this surface with this surface. This is also coincident. Then this surface with this side surface. This is also coincident. And say OK, and this part is also done. Now the eighth part, which is hand wheel, which comes somewhere here. So go to assemble, select hand wheel, now select this surface with this surface, then this surface with this surface. Make it coincident. Now go to placement, uncheck allow assumption and add the third constraint. Which is this side surface with the key side surface. And say OK. So this part is also done. Now the next part, which is fasteners. So go to assemble, select M12 washer, then select this surface to this surface and this surface to this surface. Make it coincident. Now go for placement and select allow assumptions, because this part is all around same, so no need to have the third constraint. Now go to assemble and select M12 nut, and in the same way assemble this part also. Make it coincident and say OK. So your M12 washer and nut is assembled. Now the next part is stud, the 11th part, which is coming here. So go to assemble, select the stud, now select this surface with this cylindrical surface, and then this surface with this surface. Now make it coincident and say OK, because this part is also all around same, so no need to have the third constraint. Now the next part is the washer. So go to the assemble, select M16 washer, select this surface with this surface and this surface with this surface. Make it coincident and say OK. Now the next part is the nut, M16 nut. So select this part, select this surface with this surface and this surface with this surface and say OK. So M16 nut and washer is done. Now the next part is handle, which is this one. So go to assemble, select handle. Now select this surface with this surface and this bottom surface with this surface. Make it coincident and say OK. Now the next part is clamping plate, which is coming here. So go to assemble, select the clamping plate. You can rotate this part like this. Now first you switch on the datum axis. Now using this axis, you assemble with this axis, make it coincident. Then this surface with this bottom surface, make it distance and the value will be 10. Now go to the placement and uncheck allow assumption, then go for third constraint and select this surface with this surface. Make it parallel and say OK. So this part is also done. Now the next part is the square headed bolt, which is this bolt. So go to the assemble, select square head bolt. Then from this surface to this surface, flip it. Then from this surface to this surface and from this surface to this bottom surface. Make it coincident and say OK. So this is also done. Now the next part is the fastener. So go to the assemble, select M22 washer, then this surface to this surface and this bottom surface to this surface. Go to placement, select allow assumption and say OK. Similarly, the M22 nut. So from this surface to this surface and this surface to this surface. Make it coincident and say OK. Now the last part is the dead center, which is this part. So go to assemble, select the dead center. Now select this surface with this surface. Drag it outside. Now from this back surface to this surface, you just right click there and you will find that surface. Now flip this direction and this one you make it 2 and say OK. So all the parts are assembled. Now I'll edit this section view. I'll go to models, exclude selected models, and I'll select this model, this model, this model, this nut and washer, this nut and washer, and I'll say OK. So you need to select all these parts by pressing and holding Control key, and your section view got updated. So your assembly is completely done. So this is how we do the tailstock assembly inside the Creo Parametric, and I hope this video will be helpful. Now you can like this video if you find this video helpful, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you.